Hey everyone, and welcome to Top Think. Today, we're going to learn about 12 signs you have genius-level intelligence. Now, let's begin. Number 1. The natural observer. Most people love to talk about themselves. They'll ramble for half an hour about all their funny little quirks. But a select few people spend less time talking and more time listening. If you have genius-level intelligence, you're probably more observant than the average person. When you engage in a conversation, you aren't just thinking about what you're going to say next. You aren't trying to boost your own ego. Instead, you're genuinely paying attention to the other person. You're picking up on patterns in their speech and body language. You're taking in everything they're telling you, and you're thinking up new and interesting ways to brighten up the conversation. The smartest people rarely step into the spotlight. More often than not, they're quiet and careful listeners who spend most of their time just taking the world in. Number 2. Under control. Self-discipline takes years of practice for most people, but impulse control comes naturally to the highly intelligent. You know how to regulate your emotions, stifle your unhealthy ravings, and find a comfortable balance between spontaneity and discipline. That knack for self-control also helps you lead a healthier lifestyle, filled with inspirational routines and hobbies. This is so common among intelligent people. You don't let your vices fly under the radar. When you recognize something you want to change about yourself, you just don't let it slide. You find a lasting solution. You make substantial adjustments to your mindset or your behavior, because intelligent people know when something needs to change. Number 3. Seeking specificity. In 2011, a pair of researchers investigated whether or not highly intelligent people think differently than everyone else. So they started with something simple that everybody does: making assumptions. Do people with a genius-level intellect make assumptions like everybody else? To test this, researchers used two kinds of assumptions. They're called overfitting and underfitting. Overfitting is when you know something very specific that fits one situation really well, but it doesn't really make sense anywhere else. Okay, let's say you wanted to recite a poem. If you started spouting those verses in your English class, well, people would understand you. But if you took your poems out onto the street, you'd get a bunch of weird looks, right? Well, that's overfitting. Underfitting, on the other hand, is when you choose something that's way too general. It might fit the larger population, but it doesn't really tell you anything useful. Okay, let's say you want to study cats. You gather a bunch of data from shelters and breeders, and you decide that cats have at least one thing in common. They all have 4 legs. While you could generalize that assumption to the entire population, it doesn't really tell you anything, does it? So what do cats and poetry have to do with your intelligence? People with a genius-level intellect do one of these two things way more than the other. Highly intelligent people love to be specific. In fact, you'll catch them overfitting on a daily basis. They'll make dozens of ultra-specific assumptions that don't really work anywhere else. Because as an intelligent person, you're always curious. You're never satisfied with a single vague idea that sort of makes sense. You get too specific, too fast, and then slowly but surely reel yourself back in. Number 4. Flying solo. If you have a genius-level intellect, you probably like being alone. A lot. Intelligent people have no problem flying solo because you put your alone time to good use. Maybe you have an active imagination, you like planning out your passions, or you just spend lots of time thinking about life in general. Either way, as an intelligent person, you rarely need other people to entertain you. Now, that doesn't mean you're antisocial or completely introverted, but when you're looking for a worthwhile way to spend your time, you don't rely on anyone but yourself. Number 5. Focus like crazy. When a highly intelligent person gets in the zone, it's hard to pull them out. You can focus for hours at a time, diving headfirst into whatever passion project you're working on this week. That incredible concentration is one big reason why intelligent people get so much done, but only if you're excited about your work. You hate doing things that you find boring or pointless. You get distracted constantly if you're stuck doing busy work. But when you find something you're passionate about, there's no stopping you. Number 6. Creative clutter. While a cluttered room or a desk can put a damper on your productivity, messy people tend to be more innovative and intelligent. This idea has been floating around for a while, but a recent study put the power of creative clutter to the test. In their experiment, participants sat at one of two desks. The first was clean and organized, while the second was a complete disaster. It was covered in random papers, office supplies, and other distracting messes. While sitting at their desks, participants were given a ping pong ball. Their job was to imagine new ways to use that ball. It could be something straightforward like a paperweight, or something bizarre like a hat for your finger. Researchers just wanted to see how many ideas people could come up with. In the end, people sitting at the messy desks came up with significantly more ideas. They were more inventive. They thought outside the box, which tells us that messiness and creative intelligence go hand in hand. Number 7. Debating anything. If you have a genius-level intellect, you can argue about anything. It really doesn't matter if you don't know much about the subject. One little fact is enough to keep a heated debate going for hours on end, because you can draw all kinds of logical conclusions from that small piece of data. You can do more with one tiny detail than most people can with pages and pages of information. Intelligent people are such potent debaters because their mind adapts and makes connections at lightning speed. If you can argue anything, you're a creative and flexible problem solver. And more importantly, you aren't afraid to make a point and stick to it. You have faith in your own brain. You know that you can reason things out as well as anyone. And that intellectual confidence makes you a force to be reckoned with. Number 8. Emotionally intelligent arguments. While you can effectively argue about any subject, you know when to push and when to back off. You don't stand there screaming and berating your opponent. You don't make things personal or try to tear them to pieces. Extremely intelligent people understand, even in the midst of an argument, how to be sensitive and respectful. Imagine you're caught in a debate with a friend. You might have all the tools to prove them wrong, but you realize this issue means more to them than it does to you. So instead of ruining your friendship, you get your point across without making your friend feel attacked or ignored. Knowing when to pull your punches is a rare and valuable skill, so if that's something you do on a regular basis, you might have genius-level intelligence. Number 9. Brains run in the family. Thanks to a twins study in the early 2000s, we know that part of your intelligence comes from your genetics. Your genes, around 500 of them to be exact, have a huge impact on the way your brain develops. For example, if your frontal lobe is larger than average, you can thank your strong gene pool. Since genetics play such a major role, parents can actually pass down cognitive skills like memory or reasoning. In other words, if you come from a long line of smart people, you'll probably follow in their footsteps. Number 10. Texting mania. Texting has become a hugely popular form of communication. In fact, many younger people think it's strange to have a conversation over the phone. But texting 24/7 can have a negative impact on your intelligence. You see, texting creates something called infomania. You're constantly absorbing new information without really processing anything. That means your brain isn't getting the exercise it needs to grow and develop. So, if you don't spend much time on your phone, you probably have a higher IQ. Number 11. Twisted sense of humor. Do people tell you that your jokes are weird or offensive? It turns out a twisted sense of humor is a reliable sign of high intelligence. This was discovered by a study at the University of Vienna. First, researchers had participants listen to a few different kinds of jokes. Some were mild puns, others were gross and way over the line. Participants rated each joke on how funny it was, which gave researchers a glimpse into their general sense of humor. After that, researchers needed to test their brain power. Now, if their hypothesis were right, people who enjoyed the most offensive jokes would also have the highest IQs. So they scored each participant's intelligence using a series of verbal and nonverbal intelligence tests. Just like they predicted, people with a twisted sense of humor scored significantly higher. So if your jokes don't usually sit well with people, I've got some good news. Your intelligence might be through the roof. Number 12. The big questions. Do you spend hours thinking about the way time works or how the universe came into being? Do you challenge these big questions on a regular basis? If you do, you're probably more intelligent than you realize. People with a genius-level intellect enjoy the confusion and uncertainty of these impossible questions. They want to know the answers, but they don't want someone to tell them what to believe. Highly intelligent people like you want to figure it out for themselves. Hey, thank you for watching Top Think, and be sure to subscribe because more incredible content is on the way.